Once upon a time, there was a great city on a hill. It was a city which could not be hidden, a golden city, God's city. Its name was Jerusalem. Now, long was Jerusalem thought to be impenetrable, 400 years long, in fact, since the time of King David, standing there proud, even haughty, glowering down upon the world around it. And during these 4 centuries, yes, you can bet there were some kings that wanted Jerusalem for their own. They wanted to conquer it. They tried, especially when the sun was about to set in that last hour of the day. Its sandstone buildings beckoned, dazzling, appearing as pure gold, especially that highest of all buildings, Solomon's temple. The wealth. But alas, here was a prize that refused to be taken by force or in any other way. For in addition to having been built up on top of a hill, it had a high stone wall around it. And in addition to this high, hard stone wall, a water spring bubbled up from the middle of the city. So long then could this city's inhabitants enclose themselves inside and carry on life much as they normally would if they needed to, should an enemy encamp outside. And it had worked for 4 centuries. Ah, Jerusalem, my impenetrable city, King Jehoiakim boasted as he walked on his palace balconies. You know, food, weapons, supplies, spears, arrows are not infinite. Perhaps if an enemy were merely patient enough. And then it happened. A harsh and stubborn military commander brought his army from faraway Babylon. He had a foreign name, Nebuchadnezzar. He set up encampments. He was determined to starve Jerusalem if necessary. This golden city would be his. And so, despite King Jehoiakim's boasts, his certainty, his knowledge, it happened. Jerusalem was caught by surprise. You know, God can do this. God can catch his people by surprise. Now, over these past 400 years, not just the king, but also all of God's people, all of Israel, had grown confident, they'd grown certain and sure they were God's chosen people after all, not anybody else. And their God, a stalwart and benevolent king, would surely always provide for them and protect them. Surely, even if the enemy were, say, 10 times their size. So armed with this confident certainty and knowledge, King Jehoiakim decided to parley. But Nebuchadnezzar was a cruel enemy. Jehoiakim was arrested along with all his princes, his mightiest warriors, and even the best craftsmen and artisans of the community. In fact, what the Bible says is Nebuchadnezzar left only the poor behind, and led the rest of them off into captivity. The people of God had been caught by surprise. Nebuchadnezzar then set up Zedekiah, Jehoiakim's uncle, as a vassal king who would pay tribute and stay in Jerusalem, but he paid tribute yearly to Babylon. So, what did the people of Jerusalem do? Well, their confidence remained. It was kind of like glowing embers at first, but over time they stoked it up into a warm, hot flame again. They decided to stop paying the tribute, maybe a decade or so later. Surely, Zedekiah predicted, the Babylonian army would return. But Jerusalem had learned its lesson last time. This time they would not parley. This time they would not surrender. This time they'd stockpile what they needed. They'd prepare. They'd have weapons. They'd have food. They'd have water. This was their fortified city, and they just waited out. They wait their enemy out. And sure enough, Nebuchadnezzar returned. And again, God surprised God's people. For Nebuchadnezzar was ready to wait out his enemy too. And instead of just putting up normal military encampments, he put up little, really effective villages around the outside of the city, with bathhouses, with gardens. They were going to grow their food. They were going to use the land at their disposal for infinite resources, seemingly. Anyway, more resources than the people of Jerusalem had, and it proved a distinct advantage. The siege lasted about 2 years. Jerusalem's small army began to run out of supplies. One night, the whole army decided they were going to sneak out and try to replenish their supplies. But they got caught. They got captured. And it was easy then for the enemy to go into the city and capture that without resistance. If anybody did try to resist, they were put to death. The rest, to a person, were led out of their beautiful city into captivity. None of the people who survived this exile would ever live to see their beloved city again. How could this happen? These were God's chosen people. God had led them into this land, the land of promise. God had built their beloved temple, the very place they believed in their heart of hearts that God physically dwelt on earth, the place. How could this happen? Where had God gone? Why would God bring such evil upon his people? Now today, Jesus calls us to be ready for surprises. This is the message that stands out today from the parable. 10 bridesmaids. They're part of a wedding party. Now they're all there together. They all know the bride. But 5 are said to be foolish and the other 5 wise. Why? Well, it's not a parable about following Christ, as if the 5 foolish are not disciples, but the 5 wise are. They're all there. They're all a part of the church, as it were. It's not a parable about maybe the active life versus the contemplative. The 5 wise ones are alert and ready. They're active. Contemplative people are more foolish. I don't know, maybe some extroverts want us to think that. But that's not what this parable is about. By the way, did you notice? Even though Jesus says, "Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour," they were all sleeping when the bridegroom came. It's not some kind of call to constant vigilance. And you know, it's not even a parable about loving your neighbor. If it were, then maybe those 5 wise bridesmaids would have figured out a way to share some of their oil with the 5 foolish. Instead, it's a parable about being ready. It's not just about being ready for what we think will happen, but the unexpected. It's about being ready for surprises, for God catching us off guard at an unknown day and hour. The real issue at hand is thinking we've got it all sorted out. Thinking that the bridegroom will arrive exactly when we expect him to. Or thinking that we will be able to outlast that army encamped beyond our walls because God cares for us more than he cares for those other people. Or it's about thinking that thinking we've discovered a surefire method for growing the church. This parable is a call for flexibility, adaptability, and resourcefulness instead of predictability, control, order. God can catch us by surprise. Well, once upon a time, there was a city on a hill, a city which could not be hidden, a golden city, a great city, God's city. Its name was the church. The church offered a safe haven for long years from the opposing evil forces outside. God would favor upon the church. The church was his chosen people. But it was also predictable and controlled and ordered. And over time, many of the chosen people began to feel walled in. Now, our world today is much different than the world of 2,000 years ago. It's much different than the world of 200 years ago. It's even different than the world of 20 years ago. The authority structures of the Middle Ages are flatly unacceptable in our day and age, the democratic world we live in today. Popular church growth methods of the 1990s aren't working today. Across the world, there's discussion revolving around the decline of the Christian church. Numbers are down, resources are scarce, properties are being sold at a staggering rate. And we look around at all this and we say, it's not supposed to happen like this. Where has God gone? Why has God brought such evil upon us? Well, could it be that God has in fact been doing something unexpected and surprising both within and without the Christian church? Could it be that God is catching us off guard? Could it even be maybe that our church is in a kind of exile? Once the people of Jerusalem had been led away by Nebuchadnezzar and his army, there in Babylon, in this foreign land, their captors told them to sing their songs of Zion. They tried, but they couldn't do it. There in exile, they realized their preconceptions and their definitions of God had been wrong. Their city was razed, their temple was destroyed. How could they sing the same old songs? So you know what they did? God hadn't acted like they thought God would. God had caught them off guard. God had taken them by surprise. Did they just give up and die? Well, we know history. They did not do that. They actually wrote new songs. They revised their understanding of the God that was unpredictable to them. They forged a new path forward. The time for us has come to write new songs, to revise our understanding of the God who surprises us. Now I'm going to turn the corner and give you a little bit of a report of the diocesan convention yesterday. Because I see this happening in our church. I see us revising and writing new songs. It's a really exciting time in the church. Well, so I and a few others, we went to the convention the last couple of days. The convention is the corporation's annual meeting, so its main purpose is to elect leaders to diocesan positions, and also to go through things like resolutions, ways we might adapt to our modern world and continue the work that Christ has called us to do. So I had to leave yesterday before it was over. I had a service at 5 o'clock, and it went late. It actually went, I found out it went till 4:15. I ended up leaving at 3:45. Most years, I think it would be done by 3:45, but not yesterday. Yesterday's business afternoon session started at 1 p.m., and there was a lot of heated discussion and debate over two resolutions in particular. Those two resolutions probably took us about 90 minutes to get through. Now, one of them, and this is a good thing, one of these has to do with calling ourselves a sanctuary diocese. Now, if I just throw that term out, sanctuary diocese, I think you can see how it's kind of a hot button. It led to some heated debate and discussion. But the gist is this: we want to provide a safe and holy place for immigrants, a resource to which they can turn for help. I should mention it does not mean that we are not intending to hide people. That's not the intention. We can't do that. That's illegal. We're not going to hide people from the authorities. But rather, we just want to give them a safe place. We're not going to rat them out. So the other resolution, that was one, a lot of heated debate there. The other resolution has to do with providing a safe place as well, but this time for victims of sexual misconduct. This resolution wasn't so much debated as it was discussed, and it got quite emotional. Some people shared difficult stories from their past. Imagine doing that in front of 300 people. Others simply approached the microphone and said, "Me too." One priest, a female, shared the heartbreaking story that in her first year of ordination, she was a victim in an Episcopal church by an Episcopal male priest. When she brought this matter before her bishop, she was encouraged effectively to leave her diocese, and the matter was dropped. Never went to the disciplinary levels it should have. Now, both of these resolutions involve very difficult conversations. But if we take a step back, I don't think either of these discussions could have been had even 20 years ago. Not only do we feel safe enough to have these conversations today, but these resolutions also passed, both of them. Meaning that work is being done for God's glory and the common good in today's world, under today's structures of society. Jesus calls us to be ready for the unexpected. And I'm glad to say I see that happening in this exiled church. I'm glad that we are writing and singing new songs. May this good work continue. Amen.